welcome to the very first episode of the football show. I'm your host, Pramath. I'm joined here today with our co-host, Rishabh Poonja, who is the co-founder of Number Bengaluru League. Hi, Rishabh. And with us here today for our first episode, we have a very special guest. The captain and coach of Afterhours FC, the coach with the moves, Jana. Right. So, hi, Jana. Welcome to the podcast.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
How are you feeling? Right.
Obviously, it's the first time doing it, so it feels good. It feels nice sharing my insight with a larger crowd, and obviously understand different things about how you all function as well. So it's always nice when there's a give and take in any kind of conversation.
Definitely, wonderful. Really glad to have you here. Starting off on a bit of a sour note, you have an injury, right? So one that you sustained during NBL. How's your recovery going? How are you feeling now?
So in my playing career, injuries were quite less, and it was quite a while since I played, and then unfortunately the injury happened in the last game.
Yeah.
So it not only affects you physically, it affects you mentally as well. The entire part, will I ever come back as good as I was before? And another thing that really helped me during this time was it helped me understand my players better who I coach. When they go through an injury, because I see things from my perspective, but how they might be feeling that another player's replaced them and what goes on in their head. So in terms of mental things, a lot to learn from the player's perspective, and if I learn that better, obviously makes me a better coach. I call myself a people's coach as always. So that way, definitely a lot of learnings, a lot of things to do. Unfortunately, we can't change things, but all we can do is learn from these kind of things and see how we can do better.
Right. I think we have seen multiple players, right? Players like Bellerin, players like Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo, right? So after they came back from the injury, I don't think they were ever the same, right? So I think the whole injury process and coming back from it is really important. And great insights on that front, right? So Afterhours, right? So how Afterhours FC? How do you think that actually came to being, right? You can talk a little about that.
So Afterhours was obviously, it came to me during one of the darkest times of a coach's career, right? So the darkest time of a coach's career is when he can't coach. And that was unfortunately during COVID.
Right.
And I think at that point I was flying in my coaching career. I was at Barca and I was coaching the under-16 team at the Asia Pacific Cup, playing against teams from Australia, Delhi and all that stuff. I just got the promotion of being the head coach at Trio. We had about 170 to 180 students that I was managing that time. And when this happened, obviously, then you're cost cutting and then you're firing. And I'm someone who's always on the move. Like I leave in the morning 6 and come back night 10 o'clock, coaching 3-4 sessions.
Right.
And then suddenly when the government says, bro, you can't get out of the house, you have nothing but your mind is still running at that speed. Yeah. And you can't sleep and there's a lot of things running. And so I was thinking, okay, now what do I do? How do I get back? Because obviously no other establishments were hiring at that point of time, right? So it was important for me to come up with something of my own. But obviously now coming up is easy. Sustaining is tough, as we have always seen, right? So it was about trying to build a sustainable model and also very attractive model. So Afterhours, the name especially was inspired from one of my favorite artists, obviously Weeknd released that
Let's go.
Weeknd released that time the album Afterhours, and that song was long.
Banger.
It was long, and the first 1.5-2 minutes is just music. And it just kept me thinking during that time. It was very something that can be played on the background and it slowly builds up.
Yeah.
And I think so that way a tribute to Weeknd, and also the name signifies, for example, the people who come at Afterhours are not players who are probably going to be professional players. There are some people who have a life and they have to build as an add-on to it. For example, some people are students and they want to be engineers or doctors, and some people have work. Yeah. But it's about missing that element X in your life, right? Something that makes you wake up thinking that, it's only work. But is there something that you can add on to it? So that's why it's Afterhours, after your normal hours, something that you can cater to and then, try to be a part of. And obviously, especially us as players, we like the feeling of being part of a community as a team. That, today I'm going to play with him or against him. Yeah. And that drives you to a certain extent, right? Yeah. So it was about, again, for the players who have coached before, did they have someone to play around at that point of time? So build a holistic community where people are supporting each other, pushing each other. And that's how, Afterhours was born.
Yeah, I think in terms of the whole community and the sustainability part, I really love that, right? Yeah. Rishabh has taken part in your a few of your sessions, right? I think he can talk definitely about all of that and the experience there, right? So maybe Rishabh, how was it for you, right? Going to Afterhours.
So like Jana said, injuries are a setback and you improve a lot during your injuries. So I was also coming back from injury. I texted Jana, I think one day, can I join one of your sessions? He's like, just pop on, you can just join our sessions. It was nice. Initially I struggled a lot because I was playing after a year and a half and it was really hectic. But once I played, the boys are also really fun to play with. We had some fun drills and the games at the end, it's super competitive and we all want to win. So end goal is like we're there to win but we have fun at the same time. Yeah. It's something I'm missing but you get it back in those sessions.
Yeah. Also the fact that you have players who come only for a certain session, maybe not for the next one, right? You allow that.
Yeah.
That I think really gets more people into joining, right? It makes it more easier for you to actually pursue that part, right?
So again, like in terms of sustainability as well, right? So one of the main part about Afterhours was obviously thinking about how I would want to be part of an academy if I was younger.
Right.
And something I would definitely take into consideration is probably the financial aspect of it, right? Because we know
definitely.
Now money's and like a number is just a number now. People charge what 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 1,000 per session, and all that. So it had to be very economically feasible and obviously give the due amount of respect to what people have been going through their lives. It must be practically impossible for me to expect that all my players will be there every session because obviously they're going through certain things. So that flexibility has to be there and a very inclusive thing. I don't think so I've ever told someone, no, you cannot come, you have not paid the fees or you're not good enough to play. It could be anyone who's reached out to me, please do come, have a go at it. The intensity is a tricky part, right? Like when you come first in a session, that intensity hits you like a truck. You come in there and you're like, oh, am I prepared for it? So it's a mental challenge. And then eventually after a week, your body and your mental conditions get adjusted to that. And then after that, it feels like, okay, you're learning more things about yourself. So that first week is definitely tough, but I still feel that's the right way to go about rather than toning down the intensity and then raising it later.
Of course.
So it's like you come there, have fun. Your result, your performance is not the parameter. Can you sustain and can you push yourself through the session? That's something that is really tested there.
Right. So when you talk about Afterhours, right, I think this is something that's very different, very radical from the whole, thing that is already there in Bangalore and in India right now. So what is your experience in the whole, player development cycle in India, right? You have worked at multiple clubs, right, at different stages, right? So maybe you can talk about that.
In terms of my work experience, obviously I've been privileged enough to work with quite a few professional academies which have different end goals and objectives, right? For example, when I worked at Rebels FC, which is one of the most successful teams in Bangalore right now, playing in the Super Division, you had a foreign technical director from Brazil playing high volume of football, residential academy, and they're going at it every day, right? So it gave me a gauge about that I can't do the same things with them, but maybe get them a taste of it. In the end, we all crave to be in one professional environment. Oh man. And I don't want anyone to ever not have that feeling. So that way, it felt a lot of good things. And second of all, it could be a plus point or a negative point. I'm a very emotional person and I don't hide it. Now, for example, you go to a regular gym or a regular program, people will be very sweet to you, saying like, hey, why didn't you come for your session? Or like, hey, what's happening? And Rishabh knows the amount of gossip that goes in the group. If someone doesn't come and the reason is not valid, I give it at them. It has backfired. Many people have left and things like that, but unfortunately, that's who I am. And I demand that kind of accountability. If you haven't come and you're saying, for example, I have a reason, for example, I have a game or some other commitment that I do not feel is important enough, I will ensure that I'm demanding that kind of accountability for you. So that way, it has helped me understand a lot of things about myself, about how the players, how much can they take it, and things like that. And the third thing about Afterhours, another type of identity and what I want to bring in the players is something which I'm very unhappy about the Bangalore footballing culture, right? It is fun and games, but there also has to be again a sense of accountability. For example, especially time. If it's a 9 p.m. game, 99 out of 100 games are not starting at 9 p.m. And that is something.
Tell me about it, man.
And that is something that we all, I believe, need to change. So here also, if you come late to a gym instructor never be like, hey, you did not come on time. Then you can still do your treadmill, you can still do your workout, and you can go back without any questions asked. So What's going to be really important here is you have to come on time, and if you don't, there are certain repercussions as much as possible. So instill the value of, say, punctuality, instill the value of how you speak to your teammates, how much you demand from your teammates. So that is my vision about it. Try to correct certain things, try to teach them what are the right things about football. Obviously, there's showboating and showing things on the gram and things like that. But the important things like passion, hard work, ethic, punctuality, respecting each other is something that is integral. And that way, I feel After Us has been a good project. We have started most of the sessions on time, and the players have a go at the other person. Hey, listen, you're not on time, we are losing out on time and things like that. So that when I see that also, when these people come and tell me, coach, you know what, I went and played that game, but it wasn't as fun enough because no one's coming on time or people are not wearing the correct kit. You obviously have to come with the correct kit, and then it's more fun. You tell red and blue jerseys, and there are actually two teams playing with red and blue jerseys. It's so much more fun. Rather than you like scanning, looking over this player. If you tell red and blue jersey, some people wear that Barcelona jersey. Which team is he playing for? You tell black and white, people wear Juventus jersey. So some kind of like division, and then you make those games better. So that way, obviously improving the footballing culture, especially in the lowest. Now, professional players, obviously, they are there at that level because they have followed these certain sets of protocols. But at the lowest level, still giving them that accountability of a professional player was the vision at After Us.
Definitely. I think that is something we at NBL also share. I think that is why our partnership, right, After Us and NBL, that's why it went so well, right? So, moving away a little bit from the Indian football culture, I liked a lot of things you said about After Us, right? So I'd like to ask you a few questions about that. During one of our interviews, you spoke about chaos, but control in that chaos, right? I really love that. And honestly, on the pitch, I see that, right? Definitely. So what do you do to actually instill that into your players, right? Because controlling chaos is like playing with fire.
Absolutely.
Right? So how did you go about that, right?
So first thing about chaos. Now what chaos is like you being uncontrolled. You going rogue. So when you tell the word rogue, you mean there's a sense of no control. When will you show no control? Is when you know you're not judged and you have the confidence the other person that you can go rogue. So that's something we give it After Us. We ask the player to go rogue as much as possible in terms of your tackles, in terms of the way you conduct yourself, what you want to do. But if everybody goes rogue, then there's so much chaos that there's no mismatch, and in the end it's a team sport.
There's no cohesion.
So now you're going rogue, I'm going rogue, he's going rogue, but I start learning from the way you're going rogue. Like I know, okay, now you're going to accelerate and go have a burst. I know in this situation you won't pass. And I build on that information, and then we build the tactics around it. Right. So when certain players of mine get the ball, they have the permission to go rogue, and if it fails, no problem. Like there's one player, for example, if I have to name, say, Chanakya, I know his favorite attribute is probably giving balls.
Right.
And I've told it, even if you think that it's not possible, whip the ball, no problem. We are all ready inside. If it lands or no lands, no problem. But I'm giving you the permission to whip in as many balls as possible. What probably Jurgen Klopp does with Trent as well. On some days it's a miss, but when it hits right. So now controlling the chaos now happens about how that same characteristics that you have built and learned about each other, how we can use it to help each other out. Can I use someone's pace? Can I use someone's power? Can I use someone's, say, ability to recover the ball to build a structure around it? And if that cohesion is not there, then unfortunately everyone's doing different things and we're not going to get the results that we did at After Us. Right. So that is controlling the chaos.
Right. I think a wonderful explanation, right? So how far do you think you've gone towards controlling all of that chaos, right? Because I think chaos is, once you know that some player has raw talent, I think that's where you have your chaos, right? But then controlling it is something that's really hard. Personally, in After Us, how do you think the progress has been, right?
Personally, I feel so. Obviously, I've dealt with some generation of players now, right? So I have my first generation of players who are playing now in Super and A division successfully, and some players are still in B and C. I would tell that because the level of chaos isn't that much, the level of control has been more, which is something I'm not very fond of. I would want them to increase the chaos. I want them to show them more of me. How much more can you do? How much more can you spam certain things? And then try to build about a control about it. In terms of success rate, with the current batch, I would say it's at maybe a 6.5 or a 7. And with the previous batches, now that's a different ballpark because those guys are completely chaotic. And if you leave them hell, then the game is absolutely gone. So for them, it's about how to exercise control. But here it's up to how to uplift the chaos.
Right.
Because
right.
we all know, like they always used to tell, right? Football is a bad sport for good boys. Bad sport. You play well, it's okay. But if you do not have the attributes to go at it, it's going to be a very tough sport. But if you do not have the good technical ability, but you can still go at it, you'll still enjoy that sport. So I would want them to still channel their inner chaos, and I'm waiting to see more of that.
Right. So I think in NBL, in this first season of NBL, I feel your team had a very distinct. You could know that, right? You're trying to influence the game by bombarding,
Correct.
at certain times and all of that. So how do you think that worked in NBL, right, with the other teams?
Correct.
What would your judge of that?
So in terms of NBL, I would, in my opinion, I would give it probably an 8 or 8.5 out of it. Maybe I expected certain little bit more of commitment from the senior players and things like that. But the players who were regular and who did put up a show and whoever got the chance, I'm very happy with them, to be honest. And the crowd. I think the crowd, once things started looking like, okay, now in the end, result was not important. There are games we have lost and the crowd was still at it.
Yeah.
It's because we are honoring the identity of Afterhours, right? That amount of chaos and intensity that you put into it.
Yeah.
And for example, we are losing 3-0, but you still saw the crowd at it because we knew we are doing the right things. We're still asking the right questions. We're still playing with that intensity, doing those fouls or putting pressure, pressing high and things like that. So it's about channeling the outside elements, inside elements, building momentum. And we know in football, right? 10 seconds, 30 seconds, goals can change.
Yeah.
And especially you have to hit at places that hurt. For example, you bombard the keeper. Now, if the keeper's gone, you know the entire team is a little shaky now.
Yeah.
You bombard the forward defender putting in hard challenges or is constantly marked. If he's out of the game, you know the goals have stopped.
Yeah.
So it's hitting at critical points. And I think over the season, the team understood that we can do this much better and it's a USP. It was not like me provoking them, but them understanding with each other, okay, this is what gets the crowd going. This is what gets the opponents flustered.
Yeah.
And the fact that they learned that by themselves was for me a huge victory by themselves.
Definitely. I think the fans part, right, that was wonderful, right, Rishabh? I think being there, when we were organizing the whole league, we were all standing in the sidelines, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful view of your football, but we'd like to have been in the shade where the fans were. But I think at the same time, the fans really, had immense support. I think in the whole league, definitely Afterhours, I would say had the best fans. So kudos for that.
Get ready for the ultimate podcast experience. We'll be back in a flash after this thrilling ad break. But don't worry, we've got something special in store for you in the meantime. Take a quick detour to our irresistible Instagram page and hit that follow button. Get a taste of our exciting content and stay in the loop for the epic return of our podcast. Don't miss out on the action. Join our thriving online community today.
So in the dugout, right, whenever you used to talk in between games and give a pep talk, you used to come up with strategies just like that. So we came up with a nickname for you, the Professor, from Money Heist. So what goes through your mind in between games? I know you guys spoke about you coming up with ideas and letting the players do whatever you want, but sometimes you need to stabilize the team. Right?
Correct.
What is the thought process?
Even when I was a player, right, unfortunately, obviously, I never went through any formal training throughout the course of my career. The first time I was exposed was probably in Rebels. That is after I graduated college, which is quite late.
Yeah.
So, but what I would always, because I learned the game by myself, was what I would rate myself highest would probably be my ability to read the games and the opponent. Which is why probably I hate things which is there to be done by myself. For example, gymming is something that I just can't get myself because there's no opponent. I like when there's an opponent that I can, for example, it used to always start with a corresponding midfielder or a defender that I have to play against. So what is his weakness and how I can rattle him out of his comfort zone. So that way it went on about, since I was a midfielder, the whole pan of the pitch, where are the areas that we can hit and things like that. So in terms of tactics, is something I believe I've done quite a bit on it. And before I used to be a very defensive coach. Alright, so when I initially started out, I always thought that attack wins you matches, but defense wins you titles. But after, obviously with Afterhours and changing my identity a little bit, it's always about exploring more attacking options. Because defending, now with the intensity of Afterhours, we will do the hard work. But scoring goals takes a little bit of talent, cohesion, and a little bit of tactics. So in terms of tactics, what we really had was probably a wing backs moving up really high. And it's about midfielders joining the attack as well and the strikers dropping it. So these were the things that was really important. In terms of now, for example, if I have to speak about the specific tournament, one big tactic that I think we explored much before any of the other team was the no offside rule from a goal post. Alright? And we knew that a keeper had a good reach. He could kick the ball or our centre backs could take that good goal kick, right? So what I would do is we would play in the formation of 4-3-1. And then what would happen is we would sacrifice one midfielder to pair up with the striker on either side of the goal post. So now the keeper is under dilemma. Okay, I have two players under me, which would ensure that two defenders would probably have to fall back with the keeper. Now what that would enable is the midfielders to go a little bit more back and our midfielders to start building on those half spaces. And then we would start differentiating between first 5 to 6 balls would probably be bombarding on the goalpost, building the pressure. And then we know we have fast, capable wingers and then play the ball to the wider areas. And now when there's dilemma between the back line and the midfield, okay, does the ball go wide or does the ball go deep? That's when we know we have midfielders. You play the ball through center and then we attack. By the time they come up, players have taken different position and we would attack. So from the goal kick, I think we had a lot of success rate about how we were attacking teams. Eventually, unfortunately, other teams caught on to it because of obviously you have good features like video coverage and you're showing your matches and everything, and everyone else caught on to it. But I would credit myself for, exploiting that strategy first. It was always about, we know we have capable midfielders, but how do I buy that time and space for them? And we would have to go through different routes, through Nice Road or through Bannerghatta Road to reach that end point at JP Nagar. So that way we would always try the winger option, we would try the forward option, and then the midfielders would get time. Because in the end, since my stats were quite high in the beginning of the league, they'd be like, okay, this guy is playing, we'll have to cover him. So I had to buy that time and space for me or Gaurav or whoever's playing alongside me. So that way I think we really managed to play around with the teams well. We would change things in the second half and we would manage to get results.
In the psychological part, right? Like towards the end, I think you guys are like 3 points off the top 4. Even that time, I saw your team fighting for it.
Yeah, that's it.
The Polaris game, there are times like you were like not supposed to score.
Correct.
There are like no strikers in your team, then no one turns, and then your striker turns up and does some magic later. Like how does this like?
So in terms of striker mentality, obviously we had gifted players. There was Anirudh and there was Yunus who did a fairly good job. So now what would that really do is we would try to start bullying the defenders a little bit. Alright, so once that happens, then the midfield automatically starts coming back. And with the strikers, what was really important was them dropping to create space for us to make overlapping runs around them. Since Anirudh had that body or that entire composure around him, he was good at hold-up play and releasing. And if possible, he would also have the opportunity to take the shots. So obviously fighting for the second balls would then unsettle the defenders a lot, and those second balls were picked on, and eventually the goal came from midfielders and defenders. What was primarily my role, how I eventually modified it was, if I was with the ball, I would try to get important set pieces, which in the end we scored about at least in the last 6 goals we scored 4 goals were from set pieces. And that was only because now the fact that the defense is back, once I start dribbling, people are throwing hapless challenges, and then we would have like a set piece routine that we would know that okay, a layoff to Gaurav, or I was capable of taking a shot myself, or you put 2 players on the far post and then say give a minus pass and then finish. So strikers played a great job that way, I think. For some reason.
This is your reminder to register for the NBL 7s. We will be dropping the link in the video bio.
What do you think about the standard of NBL, at least, right?
Yeah.
One full season you played. You spoke a lot about your tactics, but what do you think about the other teams? Were you surprised? Do you think, at least from, say, 5 years ago, when you first started off getting into the scene, how has it grown? How have the teams that are there in the city now grown? What do you think about that?
In terms of talent, I would say it was pretty much there. Vijayanagar, obviously, they were runners-up in their divisions, in the C division. And we all know, like, C division is probably the hardest. Even though it's low, but the number of teams that you face, upcoming teams and everyone's with that hunger to get the result. And they did quite well. Unfortunately, they lost in penalties. So it was overwhelming at one point for my players as well, because my players are again players, some of them are just starting or some of them are just managed to get into the college teams and things like that. To play against players of that caliber from different cities, there was obviously Vijayanagar, And then in terms of the top 3, probably play smart mistakes. Again, a lot of players from outside who have come in who are scholarship players, right?
Yeah.
Again, a different breed of players. How do you play against a professional environment of players who train every day? And then comes Sajapur FC. Again, like probably a very acute representation of how Bangalore football is, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not the best in terms of the discipline, but in terms of the flair and the game intelligence,
Yeah.
they would try to bring about results, and they knew how to go about results. Some people might say luck or whatever. In my opinion, they just knew what they were good at, and they were just bashingly at it. They didn't have to change their strategy in any opinion. Apart from finals, maybe I was a little bit disappointed with them. They played a little bit on the backseat. I don't know if you all agree. But I feel they should have still continued with that flair. They knew they had the players. Keep that attacking intent on, keep the shots on, build the pressure on. It was really overwhelming, in my opinion, to play with certain teams. And the other teams that were as good as us, we dropped some points, say against say Monarch, which was an important game and things like that.
Yeah.
Still, I would say I was happy with those results. But yeah, in terms of the quality, it is right there. And I'm still expecting, obviously, the quality to go much higher in the coming seasons because of the great success of how the first season went, how many people viewed it and how many people are inquiring. I'm sure people can't wait for the next season to start.
Yeah.
My players have been asking, is there going to be a next season? And you just told that about the Sevens League and stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So now everyone's like, okay, the practice numbers are coming much higher. They're like, okay, something's coming up. We are going to be showed as a graphic with one nice, say, English rap song, and we'll put a
that's all
picture.
Rishabh. That's all Rishabh.
Yeah.
Right? The curating
So
part. Yeah.
Everybody is ready to again get the best haircuts and everything on, ready to come and shine. Because again, it's nice, right? That's the kind of community I want to build. Enough
Yep.
professional, okay, that's a different level. They don't care about that. But for these players, that level of validation, the validation and the hype is for them something that makes them the entire experience complete. Which is why it should be much fun.
I think, when we started off, I think that was definitely Rishabh's vision, right?
Correct.
So providing this sort of an environment for budding footballers, that's
Yeah.
what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to, hear that from you, this feedback, right? So it makes us
Correct.
feel really good.
It
right?
is
Gives
a great,
us the validation as
it's
well.
great, like after the session, like say Rishabh would put something like, Macha, see how your pose is. Oh, Anirudh, you removed your shirt. It's going like that. The number of time, Macha, see, now I'll remove my shirt. Now this guy will come in. And those videos are so much fun, and it builds like a topic of discussion among that, right?
Yeah.
And there's that healthy banter around.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of atmosphere is probably given only to the players in the Premier League and
Yeah,
things like that,
yeah,
because
yeah.
only content gets shot about them like that.
Yeah.
Now, for example, even in my say A division teams and things like that, there's hardly any content for them because there's no one doing those things. Because obviously we have limited roles and limited resources to do things like that.
Yeah.
But here, when there's an external person doing it, it's nice to see that it rubs off on the players and it gives them a huge amount of motivation to come turn up and see the best game again.
Right. That's wonderful, right? I'm so glad that it's turned out how it has. Finishing off, I would like to actually ask you about the grassroots, level. How is it there, right? So you've participated in different stages. Say you've spoken about A division, C division.
Correct.
Of course, something very not normal when it comes to Afterhours.
Correct.
But how is the grassroots level of football in India right now?
Yeah. So in terms of my passion and my identity, I think this is where I belong, coaching players of a senior age group, pushing them to their absolute limits and try to competing against different professional environments through a semi-professional setup is where I belong. But if I would say what is my forte and something that I'm passionately very good at is the grassroots. You give me an under 6 and under 8 setup, I know the fact that I can make that kid's life through one session. I'm very good at children psychology, the way the players behave, how to get those brownie points, because every player is playing the sport for different things.
Yeah.
One person maybe because their parents push them
Yeah.
to it, one person
Yeah.
because his best friend is playing,
Right.
one person because that's the only time he's in an unsupervised environment and is coming here. And that's something I really like. Again, I allow them to be themselves, understand what the player likes, what is he there for, put certain conditions, put certain propositions, the fact that, if you do like this, I'm going to put this drill for specifically that player. In terms of the grassroots scenario, it's been an overhaul. Like, if you see the under 9, under 7 games, if you just go to the TPDL pages and see the under 9, under 7 games, it's shockingly good. And it's kudos to the entire grassroots system, how things happen. Obviously, a lot of foreign coaches have played a part. We have a lot of international academies. I have worked in probably all the academies in Bangalore with coveted grassroots foundations. I've worked in, the last one I worked was in Roots. Previous to that, I worked in South United. Previous to that, I worked in Barca. So, been part of a lot of setups with obviously different schools of education and things like that. And it's only growing and growing further. Now, what has really accelerated this growth is the fact of the competitive matches that a kid plays. If you ask me the number of competitive matches I played, I don't know if I've played more than 30 to 40 competitive matches throughout my life. But in the current scenario of things, you have your KSFA youth leagues, you have your DPDLs, and you have different baby league tournaments coming up. An average elite kid of an under 6, under 9, under 11, under 13 setup till 2015 was playing 8 competitive matches in a year. And if you qualified further, you would get to play 14. That's about it. You be part of a residential academy and imagine only playing 14 matches throughout the year. But through the advent of these new tournaments, a regular kid who is part of a team that is playing tournaments plays at the moment 50 to 60 competitive matches in a year. And we all know training is one thing.
Matches
but
are another, yeah.
You play
Definitely.
a match, the amount you learn about yourself and the game and the amount of information that's processed in that small little brain accelerates it probably by 300%.
Yeah.
And the more competitive matches experience you get, now that's the reason probably India players are certainly at the back seat, right? Your first level of competition, real competition you would get was playing division. And that is at the age of what?
Right,
After 18, 19.
Yeah.
Now, if a player who is 7-year-old is playing an official competition with his parents looking, with a proper jersey, with the correct etiquettes, and he's understanding from 7 years, okay, this is what a match situation. At 11 years, I'm seeing players who don't feel the pressure at all. While probably when I played first, even 1 year of division, I was probably shitting it. Oh no, what will happen if I do one mistake? The coaches will up, he'll give me one chart, I'll give off, means what I'll do. Now, the players know that, okay, 11 years, my parents are watching, no problem, they watch me so many times, I'm going to do my thing. Okay, this is what the coaches told me. The entire culture of bringing this match situation, okay, this is a plan, this is who's going to play and things like that. You're exposed to it as a younger age, and that's why you see all the junior teams are doing really well, right? The India under-17 team recently went for a Spain trip. They played against Real Madrid. They played against Atletico Madrid and they got results. And those are big things, right? So that way, in terms of grassroots, is a safe hand. And hopefully, 15 to 20 years, we see a lot of changes and we see actual kind of developments that will happen in the Indian stage.
Definitely. I think we are on course for that, and especially listening to your analysis of the whole grassroots level, right? I think that gives us a lot of confidence in, we all want to see our country do well,
correct,
right? And it all starts off from the grassroots. You can't just expect some sort of change without investing in the grassroots,
absolutely,
right? So I think wonderful hearing that. And if you have any questions, going on.
No, if you have any tips for youngsters on how to take it forward in the future.
In terms of taking things forward for the youngsters, first thing is obviously be critical about yourself. You having fun is paramount, but you need to ensure that other people are also having fun. And sometimes fun also is correlated with result. Result, again, is not the win, but the entire process, how we are sticking together and trying to do things.
Right.
So first of all, don't play for the clout. The clout is a sub-product and not the motivation.
Right. I think that's where people go wrong.
Play for what you are trying to play. If you don't want to turn professional, you have your pickup games, you're playing 7s and 9 aside, fair enough, do the things you want. But if you want to take things professional, you have to be part of environments which are training in your 9 and 11 aside formats, because that's what will give you development. Second thing what I would ask about youngsters is obviously stay committed to the process. It's very easy with the number of academies and number of established that we have to be like, okay, it's not working here, I'll go somewhere else. Fair enough. Please put yourself first. But also ask, did you do everything for you to get the most out of that opportunity that you have had? Try to stay committed to a process at least throughout the year. Because if you don't give yourself even 1 year or the course or the establishment, I don't think it's a fair amount of time. You can't keep shifting different places and then expecting. You need a little bit of trust that's building on. You need a little bit of, say, consistency that's building on. And you know what to expect and what to give. You keep changing environments, you'll be like, no, this is better, that is better, this is better, that is better. I feel it's not going to take you anywhere. And third thing is obviously have a 5-year plan or 3-year plan. Where do you see yourself? Where do you be like, okay, these are the things I need to improve. Can you analyze your own game if the footage is available? If not, can you ask your friends for feedback about, okay, can I make it? And things like that. So yeah, stay true to the process. Ensure you're having fun and ensure everybody else around you is also having fun. And the third thing is obviously don't chase a cloud. Cloud is a sub-product that is coming after you've provided your entire efforts.
Right, I think wonderful insights, right? I think I had really good conversation with you. Before we end, first off, a big shout out to Mighty House in Panchankri, where we are at right now, with some incredible tea. I hope you would have definitely seen me sipping at it throughout the episode. And wonderful conversation, Jana. Thank you so much for joining us. We loved having you on the show as well as during NBL, right? I think on the pitch, your passion and your commitment to the game was definitely seen. And the brand of football that After Hours really embodies is something that's there for everyone to see. Really excited for what After Hours has in store in the future. Hope you can join us for the coming seasons as well.
Definitely.
And we'll see you around.
Perfect. All right, let's make the ask count.
Yes, let's make the ask count. Cool.